West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be around the globe. A very warm welcome on this brisk but sunny spring day here in southeast Scarborough, where the daffodils, the tulips, the forsythia, the cherry blossoms are all abundant in bloom for us to enjoy. We're thankful to Mother Earth for her gifts on this Mother's Day, and want to wish all the moms out there a very happy Mother's Day, and the caregivers too, for all you do, for all your nurturing. You make a difference in the world. We would like to begin our service with the responsive land acknowledgement. So please join me in the responsive reading, which is on the screen, and please note that your words will be in bold. West Hill United is located in Treaty 20 and in the area of the Williams Treaties of 1923. These are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. As treaty people, we now share in the responsibility to care for these lands for the next generations to enjoy. This place is and will continue to be home to Indigenous peoples as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the rivers flow. We are grateful for the opportunity to live and work in community here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of the land for thousands of years. We acknowledge the historical and ongoing injustices that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples endure in Canada. We accept the responsibility to contribute toward revealing and correcting miseducation, as well as renewing respectful relationships with Indigenous communities. Amen. This morning is the start of our Moosehide campaign. This campaign was brought to our attention by a friend of mine who had regularly attended our First Nations study group. It's normally run as a one-day campaign all day long, but of course that doesn't work here. So thanks to Annie and Babette, they suggested we run it from Mother's Day through to Father's Day. And so we begin. Today is Mother's Day, a day when we recognize and celebrate the women who are and who have been precious in our lives, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, wives, daughters, and friends alike. Sadly, not all women in our world are celebrated. In recent weeks, this has been brought to the forefront of my attention by the Moosehide campaign. The campaign was started 15 years ago in a First Nation in British Columbia. A father and daughter were out moose hunting, which was close to the Highway of Tears, where so many women and children went missing. They brought back their concerns to the community, who believe that violence against women and children is preventable, and set about doing something. Although Indigenous women are killed at 6 times the rate of non-Indigenous women, the community recognized that physical and sexual violence against women, children, and all those along the gender continuum was not just an issue affecting Indigenous people, but it is a serious issue that crosses all races and cultures worldwide. Did you know that in Canada, a woman or girl is murdered every 2.5 days? Worse still, the burden of trying to end such violence has clearly been resting solely on the shoulders of women. The Moosehide campaign started 15 years ago with a simple but powerful question: where are all the men in this vital work? The Moosehide campaign recognizes that all forms of violence are unacceptable, regardless of gender, but there is a disproportionate number of women who are victims. Of course, not all violence against women leads to the death or disappearance, but we should never dismiss the damage done by smaller acts of violence that cause emotional distress and trauma. It is imperative that we recognize the many harmful and often normalized behaviors along the continuum of violence against women and girls. Interlinked acts of abuse range from everyday misogyny and sexual harassment to coercive control and femicide. The Moose Hide campaign is an invitation to men and boys and to all Canadians into the conversation about ending violence against women and children. This campaign is not about shame and blame. Setting aside humiliation and condemnation is crucial, but rather it is calling people to healing journeys grounded in respect, responsibility, and care for one another. Men's attitudes can cause not only women harm, but also harm to themselves. Let us consider, how can we be active allies and disruptors of violence for one another? What does it mean to be a man? What constitutes strength? Boys and men often grow up believing that feeling any kind of emotion is a weakness. Is recognizing, understanding, and taking responsibility for one's feelings, in other words, emotional intelligence, really a weakness? You may notice that I too am wearing a moose hide pin. That's because the campaign is rooted in Indigenous traditions and teachings. The moose hide is a symbol of cultural identity and resilience. The act of wearing the pin is not only a personal commitment, but also a way to honor Indigenous heritage and the stories of those affected by violence. Can you imagine the progress we could make if everyone opposed violence? For those of you wishing to honor and support this campaign, we have pins in vegan form and moose hide available following the service. Miigwech. At the end of the readings, we customarily add the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey, and we invite you to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is simply an invitation if you wish to do so. The following words were adapted to a poem from song lyrics by Scott Kearns and inspired by the original words of Catherine Hankey. I love to hear the stories of those who rose above discouragement and sadness to live their lives in love. Their loving care was gifted to self and others in need. The wisdom gained through their trials became a gift for them to share. I love to listen to the stories of those who chose to dare, to challenge some injustice, to risk the slurs of others, to move beyond the fear. They must have heard a higher calling to serve a clear purpose and provide the needed care. May we create new stories wherever there is need to gladden the hurting heart and feed the hungry soul. But if we lose the vision and attend to lesser things, may the timeless stories refresh our souls again. We celebrate the stories that shine with common glory. The sacred theme of these stories is the greater power of love, offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its light.
Last week, we shared stories told in books. This week, we return to storytelling through movies. Some stories can be transformative and influence what we believe and even what we do. Perhaps the movie, The Shawshank Redemption, is such a story, and it's my pleasure to review it to you this morning. This story told in this movie is based on a Stephen King short novel called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Rita appears only briefly in a movie clip and on a poster which hangs on a certain prisoner's wall. The film took Rita out of its title after attracting people to audition for the role of Rita Hayworth, including a man in drag. My apologies to women for reviewing an all-male cast film. There's not one female in this movie. But let's remember that in each of our origins, every human had a mother who wanted only the best for their child. including the cons in this movie. This story is about a young banker named Andy Dufresne. In 1947, he is sentenced to Shawshank State Penitentiary for a double homicide. Andy's claim of innocence never wavers. Over the following 19 years, he befriends a fellow prisoner named Red and gains the trust of prison warden. He becomes instrumental in a money laundering scheme led by the warden, and this is how the plot thickens. Frank Darabont purchased the film rights to Stephen King's story in 1987. It took him 8 weeks to write the script. King never cashed the $5,000 check from Darabont for the movie rights. He later framed it and returned it to Darabont with a note. "Dear Frank, in case you ever need bail money, love, Steve." Love that. Director and Castle Rock founder Rob Reiner liked this script so much he offered Darabont over $2 million to allow him to direct the movie, which isn't bad for 8 weeks of work. But Darabont considered the offer and chose to remain the director, saying, "You can continue to defer your dreams for money and die without ever having done the thing you set out to do." And so this movie became Darabont's directorial debut. Within weeks of showing Castle Rock the script, he received $25 million budget to make the film. There were many big stars that were considered, and many that showed interest. Gene Hackman, Clint Eastwood, and Harrison Ford, to name a few. But Castle Rock chose lesser-known actors. They cast Tim Robbins to play Andy, and the role would change his life. And Morgan Freeman was cast as the film's narrator. It was his first film narration, one of many to follow. And he also played Andy's best friend, which ignored the book's character description of a white Irishman named Red. Freeman's character alludes to the choice when asked by Andy, "Why do they call you that?" He answers and then smiles, "Maybe it's because I'm Irish." Darabont's fresh directing was not without its notable moments, including, it took 9 hours to shoot Andy and Red's opening chat in the prison yard. You saw a little bit of it in the trailer. Red and other inmates tossed a baseball throughout that short scene. Freeman threw the baseball for the entire 9 hours without complaint. He showed up for work the next day and his arm was in a sling. It was unusual that the voiceover narration was recorded before the filming actually began. And then Darabont had the narration played on set prior to shooting each scene to help dictate the rhythm of each scene. Morgan Freeman recorded the guide track in only 40 minutes. Sometimes I think rookie moves can be quite brilliant, and I think this is one of them. Darabont modified elements of the original story to drive home the hopelessness of prison life. This is a fundamental component of his storytelling. The character Brooks, which is played by James Whitmore, ends up taking his own life after he fulfills his 50-year sentence. In the book, Brooks dies in a retirement home of natural causes. Darabont wanted to affirm that the prison inmates become entirely defined by the institution of prison life, making them dysfunctional in free society. In another chapter, a young prisoner named Tommy is shot down on the orders of the warden to keep him silent about his knowledge of the evidence exonerating Andy. Rehabilitation for this amiable character was within reach when he is murdered without mercy. The audience is stunned by this turn in the story. But in the book, Tommy is transferred to a nicer prison to keep him silent. This impactful scene illustrates how the corrupt warden, played by Bob Bunton, orchestrates control through fear. His welcome address to new prisoners finishes with these words: "I believe in two things, discipline and the Bible. Here you'll receive both. Put your trust in the Lord. Your ass belongs to me. Welcome to Shawshank." In his second year of prison, Andy makes a bold move. After overhearing a guard complain that he will be losing much of his inheritance to taxes, Andy offers advice on how to shelter the money. He then gets a new lease on life as a convicted murderer who provides sound financial planning. His skills grant him protection from the brutes. The warden becomes dependent on Andy to help him with laundering his extorted funds. Andy says quietly to Red one day, "You know, the funny thing is, on the outside, I was an honest man, straight as an arrow. I had to come to prison to be a crook." You would expect his fellow inmates to resent Andy for being in good favor with the warden. Instead, you see them admiring him, looking up to him. Andy uses his gains to give back to his community inside the prison. Andy asks for only one small favor of the head guard in exchange for help with his taxes. He asks that his co-workers receive a break from labor and a cold drink of beer. At the conclusion of this scene, Andy passes on the beer, saying, "No thanks, I gave up on drinking." During this scene, the audience hears Red's voiceover narration. You could argue he'd done it to curry favor with the guards, or maybe make a few friends among us cons. Me, I think he did it just to feel normal again, if only for a short while. This scene is favorite to many. I think it's one of those examples of beautiful storytelling. Tim Robbins plays the role of someone who is subdued but intense. He ages effectively from newcomer to father figure. After years of diligently writing requests, Andy receives a donation to build a new library. Vinyl records and a turntable were included in the donation. Andy plays an aria from Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro. He plays it over the public address system. The overhead shot of the prisoners in the yard, spellbound by the music, is one of the film's epiphanies. The music carries the prisoners to a tranquil place, and the audience is right there with them. Music can be a powerful thing. A movie's musical score is a critical element to its success. It guides the audience through emotion. Think John Williams in the opening credits of Star Wars. The audience knows they're going to go on an adventure. Too often, a movie score in a drama punches the audience in the gut with too loud, high-strung notes. Often, I'll be known to mute the remote, and Kevin doesn't like it very much, but it just helps me get through it. That didn't happen with this movie. Thomas Newman's music score enhances this movie rather than dictates. It's subtle. It provides calm instead of tension. It conveys to the audience, it's going to be all right. It's hopeful. When I came across a quote from Andrea Gibson, I thought of the Mozart scene in Shawshank, so allow me to read this. It's turning the thunder into grace, knowing sometimes the break in your heart is like the hole in the flute. Sometimes it's the place where the music comes through. As you can imagine, Andy received some solitary confinement for that stunt. When he gets out, he explains to his friends that it's hope that gets him through his time. Red vehemently dismisses this concept Hope is a dangerous thing, my friend, shaking his spoon at Andy. It can kill a man. And then he picks up his tray and moves to another bench. During our studies of the science of hope, we observed that the word hope is often mistakenly used as wish. Wishing is passive and robs us of control. This was Red's kind of hope. Red felt that there was no place for hope in prison life. He could see no pathway to a better future. He believed he had no agency. Andy tells Red that hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. Andy believed that his future was going to be better than his present day, and that he held the power to make it so. Andy was able to set goals, create a new map, and find the agency to achieve. He knew his greatest resource was time. Andy used a little rock hammer to chop away a tunnel. He cut away pages in his Bible to hide the hammer. He used the chapter of Exodus in the Bible. You see this when it's revealed. Without knowing the hammer was hidden inside during a routine check, the warden passes Andy's Bible back to him saying, "Oh, you don't want to forget this. Salvation lies within." I just think there's some brilliant writing in this movie. Andy and Red's reunion was filmed in the Virgin Islands. The location poses as Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Andy describes the spot as a place with no memory, offering absolution from his sins by allowing them to be washed away by the Pacific Ocean. The ocean's very name means peace. Andy and Red's relationship has been described as a love story, a loving friendship between two men that few films offer, where the friendship isn't built on conducting a caper or a car chase. Andy and Red nurture each other and serve as touchstones for keeping their sanity intact. Their everyday sustenance and minor triumphs are wonderfully inspiring. Tim Robbins himself says that a lot of happy endings are tacked on to films. They aren't earned through a long process of a journey with struggles. This one got that. It's hopeful. It teaches us that there is a place in the world for all of us that is achievable. The Shawshank Redemption premiered in the Toronto Film Festival in September of 1994, and it opened in theaters a few weeks later. It got good reviews, but it did poor business. After a slow start, it was yanked from theaters before it recovered costs. It was a box office flop. What happened next is one of the most remarkable stories in movie history. Shawshank found its real mass audience through video store rentals and sales and on Turner's movie nights. All screens in the home television. In 5 years, Shawshank was a phenomenon, a high-grossing bestseller. And today, now 32 years later, streaming platforms like Crave and Prime pay to offer the film to their subscribers so that viewers just like me and you can continue to tune in. The Shawshank Redemption is now considered one of the greatest films of our generation, with audience members citing it as a source of inspiration. The United States Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the National Film Registry. I will conclude today with the final words spoken in the movie. And before I read the quote, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Picture an old Trailways bus heading south. It's warm, sunny weather. Find Morgan Freeman, find his face as the character of Red, gazing out the bus window, his elbow propped on the windowsill. And hear his melodic voice saying, "I find I'm so excited I can barely sit still or hold a thought in my head. I think it's the excitement only a free man can feel, a free man at the start of a long journey whose conclusion is uncertain. I hope I make it across the border. I hope to see my friend and shake his hand. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. I hope. End of quote. Isn't it beautiful how the storyteller concludes with Red now believing in hope, that tomorrow is going to be better than today, and that he has the roadmap and is literally traveling down it, and he has the wherewithal to get where he's going.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.